Welcome to the Two Act Podcast. I'm Gothjon, and always with my co-host
Adi.
Yep. Today we're going to dive into one of my first animes that I've really fallen in love with the entire medium, Fooly Cooly, or FLCL, produced by Studio Gainax, known for anime titles such as Neon Genesis Evangelion, Tenga Toppa Gurren Lagann, and my favorite, Panty and Stocking with Garter Belt. Will, Adi, what are your first impressions for Fooly Cooly?
My first impressions was, I think this has got to be like one of the most challenging things I've ever had to review, ever, and especially in this podcast. But Fooly Cooly was, I think, my impression of it was more emotional than rational. I think it's a fascinating anime that has so many range of visuals and emotions, but is so hard to follow at the same time. And I think it's one of those ones that it's okay to not necessarily understand what's happening, but you can still enjoy and you can still engage with uh, what unfolds in front of your screen. And I think this is like, it made me really nostalgic about the animes that came out in the early 90s. And this is something that I would have probably watched on Cartoon Network or Adult Swim when I was a kid. So yeah, it's a fascinating story with like weird characters, weird occurrences, irreverence, and it's still a spectacle. What did you think?
So
Do you
first
want to give it?
impressions.
Do you want to give it an intro?
Yeah. Let's do the intro, and then I'll do my first impressions. All right.
Sure.
So picture this: it's the summer of your adolescence. Fooly Cooly, or FLCL for short, is a coming-of-age story that is wrapped in with aliens, robots, and the best Japanese rock album to ever be produced. The best thing about this show is that it's extremely short, in a rarity nowadays, and is only 6 episodes. Fooly Cooly is an entire dream. It's wild. It's not necessarily something you want to show to somebody on their first anime viewing. So for my first impressions, I've seen this show like 40 times, probably more than that. First impressions, at a breakneck pace, Fooly Cooly really lets you know what you're in for. It's not for everybody. This is a love it or hate it type of show. You either like love the vibe and the art style, or you're really not in the mood for that and you want something more serious. The show is clearly that. It's definitely a style over substance type of show.
Well said, but on that last point about style over substance, I feel there is substance. I just feel like it's one of those elusive shows that you kind of have to make it, you got to make your own narrative out of it. And what happens, but the more you can give context to this show yourself and draw from it, the better it is. And I think what I could draw from more than anything was, I think it is at its heart a coming of age story, like you said, which is always very sensitive and very tender topic for me, because I think coming of age stories are like that personally. Yeah. But I feel like when I'm watching a boy have crazy Kaneka robots coming out of his forehead and fighting like there's some sort of kaijus or whatever, it feels like a fever dream of all their emotions, all his feelings externalized in this world that we're set in, which is Mabose. Am I getting that correct? The city?
Yeah, in the city, yep. So the main character is Naota. He's a 12-year-old working class boy who lives with his father and his grandfather. he's rushing to grow up and sees all the adults around him as really dumb, which is funny because all the adults around him are all super insanely goofy and don't take really anything seriously. And like the only other like serious person in this show is one of his classmates.
Yeah, that's true. And I think like Naota comes off as he's kind of an awkward loner, but
Yeah.
he hangs out with this one girl who used to be his older brother's ex-girlfriend.
Girlfriend. Yep. Yep.
And
That's Mamimi.
Mimi, yeah, it's
Yep.
it's a pretty wild opening for a first episode where Shorty's trying to hook up, and
Yeah.
it's
Yeah,
it's like
and Mamimi's like 5 years older than him too. That makes it kind of like weird. Like she's like a 17-year-old like high school student that's a complete delinquent, and she has like a loose grip in reality who carries a camera around and chain smokes all the time.
yeah, she's really delusional, and I think that I wouldn't be surprised if if we really want to analyze it, I wouldn't be surprised if she's mentally ill in some way because
Sure.
it seems like she's really lonely and disconnected from reality.
Yeah,
But
she's got to find her next Takun.
Takun, yeah, which is kind of like a nickname for her obsession, right?
Yeah, it's probably her nickname for Now's older brother, and then that's what I'm gonna extrapolate. That's why she
Right.
calls Naota Takun, and that's why she calls the cat Takun, and that's why she calls even the little robot Takun.
Yeah, it's something that's ever flowing. But their dynamic is interesting because it starts off with them together. So I was, expecting are they both the main characters? But she's mostly part of his life. But
Yeah,
it's interesting, kind of what trajectory that takes because you expect them to be together, but that
right.
first episode is just so much is happening, right? I mean, we can talk about some of the aesthetics and the style and the music. I'm a big fan of the
Yep.
rock music in this by The Pillows, I believe.
Yep, you got it.
And it's the animation style is so retro. It's so like
Yeah, it's 4:3. Like there is no 4K Blu-ray, I believe. I have the 1080p. It honestly looks like shit on modern TV, but that's fine.
no. I mean, I'm just imagining what a vibe it would be to watch it in one of those old CRT TVs.
That's what I did originally back in the day when it was airing on Adult Swim. That's how I watched it. I watched it the dub my first time around, and then I found out one of my friends in high school was really into the show, and then we just kept watching it. He watched it in Japanese, I watched in English, and then we'd mix it up, and then we would just put it on the background and just enjoy an afternoon gaming. Got Fooly Cooly on. And you don't really have to really pay attention to a show like this after you watch the first couple times and you're like, I kind of have an idea what's going on, but it's not necessarily like a plot that you're strictly following.
Yeah, I mean the show is like it's not plot driven. It's
No.
not trying to take you from point A to point B. But it's showing you a random sequence of events which is always where there's always something happening.
Mhm.
And it's often surreal or bizarre, and even the city that they're staying in kind of feels like this industrial town that has this huge,
Giant. What
structure.
was that thing?
Iron.
Iron. Yeah, an iron, like straight out of Monopoly. This oversized medical mechanica building is a gigantic iron. And they say things like in the show where it's like about like, yeah, you're trying to iron out all the wrinkles so everybody's dumb.
Yeah, it's so weird, and it's fascinating because it's symbolic right from the get go, and you know that there's something. This has some sort of significance to the plot, and I think it ends pretty pretty significantly with that object at that building. But before we get into that, there's I think the first episode introduces us to one major character who's going to change Naoto's life in a way.
Yep. The pink-haired Vespa woman. Haruko Haruhara. That's how she introduces herself, at least. Whether or not that's her real name, that's up for debate. She's a pink-haired girl that is not only odd, but very confusing. And her goals involve something with Naota after she runs him over and hits him in the head with the guitar.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. She's like, she's insane, isn't she?
Yeah, no, she's cracked. Yeah. So I'm not gonna worry about spoilers for a over 20-year-old anime. It's 6 episodes, and what could you really spoil?
No,
So
you can't.
she creates a NO portal between inside his head and then to whatever like galaxy that the thing she's trying to get out, the Atomisk. And what ends up happening is a giant medical mechanical robot climbs out of his damn head. And that's why I say this is not a good first anime, because you're just like, are they all like this?
Well, it could be a good first anime if you're tripping and you're
yeah. Maybe if you're taking some edibles or smoking a little ganja, I could see that. In fact, I'm sure that's what my friend's brother did before he watched it the first time. Something like that, or like Dead Leaves, another animated movie, not necessarily of the same studio or anything like that, but it does have some homages. Like Conti is a medical robot with the head of a TV set, and he's like a goofy robot, and he fights all the robots that come out of Naota's head. And when he turns red, it's like he's getting possessed by Atomisk.
Yeah. There's times where he consumes Naota, and it kind of allows him to power up and defeat there's always another counterpart monster creature robot that they
one of Mechanica's monster things that he has to fight.
Yeah, but I really liked Conti's design. I thought it was oddly endearing, and I love that he becomes part of. So Haruko moves in Naota's household and becomes a housemaid.
Yep,
and
not a very good maid.
No, she's causing.
Conti is a better maid.
Conti,
he follows directions.
He's shy. He's he follows instructions. He's sincere.
In fact, I would like to say he's more human-like than any of the humans in the show.
How ironic is that? But so true. He kind of does have a sort of really humane side to the way he's emotionally responsive to everything that's happening in the house.
Like, how does a robot blush? I don't know, but they drew it like that.
I think that really strikes you, and I think I had to look up the studio, and obviously I was not so surprised that it's made by Studio Gainax.
Yep,
which
unfortunately went bankrupt.
That's what I wanted to talk about. So when I watched this show and then I looked it up, and then of course we did Redline a few months ago, which obviously is again one of the great animes that have been visually created, completely hand drawn. But it got me really sort of sentimental about Gainax in a way, because they've made some really iconic stuff for anime. Like the contributions they've had, like Evangelion and everything else. I think it's kind of sad that they went bankrupt, and I think it's even more reason why shows like this and shows that I would argue this fits in that pantheon of classics like Samurai Champloo, Cowboy Bebop.
I could agree with
all those great retro animes that came out sometime in the 90s. To the early 2000s.
They all become timeless.
Exactly.
Like, no matter what your ratio is on your TV, you can put this on and go, holy shit. They really were hammering it all out.
Yeah, it really is timeless, and I think I hope people recognize Gainax. And I get that we're heading into an age where anime is being more and more CGI.
Mhm.
But I
Oh,
think,
don't you worry. Half of it will be AI in the next 5 years.
depressing as it sounds, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's like still remarkable. I love the animation in this. I think
Mhm.
it's weird. It's quirky for sure. It's like muddled at some frames. They use some manga like
Yep,
static frame
some manga
animation.
panels, which, unlike something we previously covered, I felt like it really felt inside like the show, like it's very expressive. It added, it didn't subtract,
Right.
unlike
Yeah.
ping pong animation.
Hmm.
Which, when I recommended this, I thought a lot of that, like the coming of age story, like part, how it would relate to something like ping pong, where you'd that would be the part that you would really like about it. I knew that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I for sure connected with the coming of age
Hmm.
part of it, and I think what I liked about it was, it's only 6 episodes, which is, let's face it, in today's age, kind of really difficult for animes to do.
Right.
I don't think you get a lot of animes that, most of them will always aim for like that 12, 10 episode.
Hmm.
And I think what I hate about animes today, as opposed to this, is animes today are like they make 10 episode seasons, but they'll end it in such a cheap cliffhanger where they're like, "Oh, we're making a season 2, so it'll continue there and the arc continues there." Like, no, I just want to
And then
watch.
you never get a season two for 20
If you're
years if you're unlucky.
if you're unlucky, it just ends. If you're lucky,
Mhm.
yeah, sure, it'll
So,
continue, and I think
panty and
people
stocking,
normalize. Yeah.
no game, no life. We're never getting season twos, but panty and stocking we are, because thankfully a lot of the people that were in Studio Gainax, they left to start their own studio. That's Studio Trigger. That's why you have
Oh,
Little Witch Academia. A lot of the creatives that were on shows like Fooly
Cyberpunk,
Cooly, yep, Cyberpunk,
Edge
yep,
Runners.
that's where, yeah, you can kind of feel like a lot of that, I guess, like the like creative stuff like in Little Witch Academia.
Yeah.
Um you can really see a lot of those parallels. And then, in fact, like Darling in the Franxx is almost like a some of like the mech designs are like straight one-to-one references of Gurren Lagann, or
Right.
Evangelion. Exactly. Like, it's these people are still around. They're still making anime in their own studios and stuff like that. Unfortunately, with Fooly Cooly, the IP, the rights holders that were selling stuff for Gainax, they gave it to the original production studio for Fooly Cooly, which necessarily doesn't have like same exact people. Which is why you got Fooly Cooly Alternative, Fooly Cooly Progressive, and whatever the fourth one is, like animes that I've never completed all the way because it just doesn't have the same flavor as the first season.
Right. So we can say that the first one is still the definitive take on this
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
IP.
Now, Haruko is in, I'm sure, all of the other ones because she's like the poster child of the mascot, I guess is the best way to put it. The thing that connects all the storylines, which I don't know if any of those other shows have storylines, or they're like Fooly Cooly where it's kind of in the subtext, which, sure. I know the music's great though, because I've listened to some of the soundtracks that the Pillows put out for those other seasons, which is great.
Right, right. No, coming back to the point I just wanted to make was, yeah, I said that not a lot of animes are short as this.
Hmm.
What I liked about it was that it's even in the 6 episodes we see, it's not really taking you on a life journey in 6 episodes. It's giving you a very brief snippet into Naoto's life, and I think that Naota's life, and I think that it's at a point of his life where he feels the most disconnected in a way. But to see what he goes through in that brief period, Some people may not have necessarily liked how it ends, but I think that that's what I love about coming of age. Coming of age isn't about showing you growing up and becoming an adult over the course of whatever 5, 10 years. It's about capturing a moment in your life, in your adolescence, or in your early prepubescent stage where you kind of realize what it means to grow and what it means to, reach a certain point in your life where you can see things and reflect and acknowledge that you're changing. And I think that's what I took to heart the most with this show. And I like that, we see Naota go through some transformation, which happens in the most bizarre, unlikely ways. And I kind of looked at it more as a metaphor for growing up because, growing up and even you could argue whole of life can be like that, but there's so much stuff that happens internalized or externalized within one's life. And I think that it's fair to say that sometimes you get completely lost in what's happening around you, where everything feels bizarre, everything feels like kind of a fever dream. Some people can relate to this. Maybe I can in some regards, and I think that's what I took to it. And when I looked at those robots fighting, I kind of looked at it as, we see crazy shit happen all the time.
It's true.
It's kind of, we're getting more and more desensitized to what's happening around us. And I feel like it's great to see a show that's going the distance and showing you just how bizarre things can be. And people are like going on with their lives like it's just another day.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, like I took that surrealism and everything that the show put in with its action and its robots or whatever the alien
Mm-hmm.
team this had, and I looked at it in that regard, and I thought that it was kind of like a way to look. You can look at it as a metaphor, but that's what I thought. It was kind of like externalizing what he was going through, and episode, I think one of the episodes where he has to, I think it was the baseball episode. Uh, I think that was probably the best out of the. If you had to ask me
Sure.
which one I liked the most, I think that was the one that really captured what he went through and how he grew in a way. But I think we should talk about we should talk about like what happens in some of the. Was there like certain
So,
episodes or anything that kind of
um,
struck out? For me, I looked at this as like kind of a love child of if Evangelion and Dandadan had a love child, it will be this. But then
yeah,
that's kind of unfair to say because I actually think Dandadan takes more inspiration from this. So
yeah. I
that's
could
weird
definitely
in a
see
way.
that. There's a lot of things about this show that I will always remember. Um, and not necessarily like a specific episode, because like every one of these episodes is like its own. So if these seasons are an anthology, like every episode could be its own anthology. Like, so in one of the episodes, there's a quote that I will remember probably to the day I die because of just how much it like struck with me. So it's raining, and Naoto's asking Mamimi, like, why do you like my brother? And she says, watermelon, like a panda with a mean face, or sandals with pressure points drawn on them, or the smell of a blackboard eraser, or a Sunday morning and you wake up and it's raining. Well, I like it more than hard bread. Like something about that. Like I remember waking up on Sunday mornings, in my teenage years, and it's raining. And it's just like you just want to like stay cooped up, and like I could really relate with that. Like maybe that's just like her depression or something like that. And like there are so many quotes inside this show. Like even like the first like episode, like the Kakin bingo, like I will always remember like how this show starts because of how it just really just puts you like in that mood. You know exactly how you can relate with this show. And
Yeah,
then
absolutely.
yeah, and like the second one, Firestarter, you kind of want to play that Firestarter game. It's very like visual how Mamimi, her and her being crazy. She sees Conti as a god, and then you got Conti with a halo on his head, and he's got
Yeah,
angel
wing.
wings, and he's flying in the air, and they're playing Hybrid Rainbows, like one of the best songs from that track, and it's just like this is picturesque. Like being an art snob, like this is art moving.
It's a vibe for sure, and I think that there's so many instances in there that are striking. I mean, the
Hmm.
whole him, the episode with him opening with him having he's sort of defined to swing the baseball bat,
Yeah.
and then it ends with him swinging the guitar at that projectile. Uh,
Yeah, no, he really come a long way. Is he going to
he
swing the
does.
bat? If he don't, we're all going to die.
It's literally life or death, right? And
Hmm.
the truth is, he's just kind of like an ordinary kid in middle school, and
Yeah, he's 12.
he kind of hangs out around this bridge area with a
Yeah.
pond, and the water's always sprinkling and shining, and it kind of made me really nostalgic in a way because I looked at reminded me a lot of shows that kind of did that same effect,
Mhm.
derived that same effect of a beautiful evening with orange skies and
Yeah.
water sprinkling, and there's something about that evokes that childhood nostalgia
Yeah.
that we all can relate to. So I definitely can agree with you on that there's a lot of stuff in here that evokes a certain emotion and makes
Yeah.
you, kind of, you may not understand what's happening visually, but you can kind of
Or
relate with
narratively.
this. Yeah, narratively, but you can associate with what emotion it derives in you.
Hmm.
But I was really kind of interested to see what the dynamic of his relationship with Mamini would be like, because obviously I thought they were a thing or something at the start of it.
Right.
And then it's kind of weird that he's hanging out with this girl who was like his older brother's girlfriend, and his older brother isn't around anymore, so he probably feels the absence of that
Hmm.
in his
Yeah, you
life.
even got like his classmates calling him his wife, her his wife.
Yeah,
Whereas
yeah,
now
yeah,
it's his
yeah.
wife.
True, true, and it kind of reaches to that point where I think the biggest realization he has is that she doesn't really see him in that same light.
Right.
And when he realizes that, he finally lets her go. Um, and I think that was a really big moment for his character because that leads him to be more attached to Haruko. Because at
Hmm.
first there's this sort of kind of rivalry between Haruko and Mamini. Like Haruko sees it as a rivalry, maybe she's playful.
Yeah.
But then you kind of see Naota becoming more and more drawn to Haruko. Um, Although there's some really weird shit in it that I couldn't vibe with. Some parts of it was like the father trying to hit on her, and then
Yeah,
they
and
both
how
are
to
having a
yeah, that I can really look past that. That's just like anime from that time. They're all very pervy. In fact,
yeah.
they do like a bunch of like references. So not only do they do the South Park reference, which is legendary in anime, they also do a reference straight up to Lupin the Third with the boxing glove and Fujiko, Haruko just sitting in there on the bed, and then it does like a little freeze frame. And then he makes like a reference to Count of Monte Cristo, which is the Lupin the Third Studio Ghibli movie, which I'm just like, yeah, this is great.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There's a lot of pop cultural references
Yep.
packed in this story, the narrative, the visuals rather,
Hmm.
and I think one that I didn't quite like was the father wearing the Nazi uniform. I
Yeah,
thought
that
that was
was
fucking weird.
weird.
That was like I don't think. I mean, I'm sure they made it at a time where people didn't really give a shit or whatever. Maybe
That
social
and
media
that how the
didn't exist.
Japanese feel about Nazis too in that time.
Yeah, yeah, but I feel like now it doesn't really come
And yeah,
across
that might
tastefully
be
at
one that
all.
yes, I can agree with that. Doesn't
I
age
found
well.
that to be rather problematic. I don't
Yeah.
think it's funny to joke about something like that, and I
Right.
think that it kind of brings down some of what, you know, it just feels kind of out of place in an odd
Yeah.
way. But again, it's not like I hated the show for that reason. I can understand. That
Holy
being said,
shit! I went full woke.
that being said, there's a scene where, especially in that baseball episode, there's one scene where everyone in the boys' team are wearing lipstick and makeup, right? And they're looking to Haruko, and you might wonder why they're wearing makeup. Why are the men who are playing this game wearing makeup? Then I read that the animators who made this anime animated in a way where none of it actually kind of makes sense, but some of it they did because they found it amusing. So I thought it was
That
really
tracks.
so I thought it was really like kind of in line with what the show is like, which is like its own thing. It's irreverent. It's
Yeah.
meant to be kind of out of place and weird, and it's not necessarily, you know, it can trick you. You can be tricked into trying to analyze it.
Yeah, like the whole like robot scene with his robot dad where he kills him.
Yeah, that was another really weird subplot that
What the fuck?
I didn't get it. Like,
I thought he actually killed his dad for like like 10 minutes. It was like, holy shit, this show went fucking nuts.
Yeah, it did. It did. It was so weird. The whole subplot with the father. The father's like goofy, and you know he's the cat's reaction is what really cracked me up. The cat's always looking at everything that's happening with such a smirk, and you kind of feel like the cat knows more than it needs to. And then I read there was something with how Haruko uses the cat to actually communicate with the aliens, which I thought was new information to me. Like I didn't see that
Well,
coming.
there was, yeah, there's that one scene.
Exactly, but
And then you got like her character design where she has a bracelet and it moves whenever Artemis is around.
yeah. The Vespa, which is iconic.
The yellow Vespa.
She's always like crashing into something.
And it also defies gravity.
It defies any law of physics, and there's like, yeah, even the episode where Nina Mori, was it the girl from his class who
the one without
stays
the
over
lenses in her glasses.
Yeah, I didn't understand the context of what her parents were going through, but like the whole thing
like
with
so her dad was he was cheating on her mom, and then the secretary was sneaking out. I think that's generally what it was, and I guess like he was he's either in like government or he's like famous, he's wealthy.
Right. But it was kind of funny how like she got intertwined with the whole thing, and then she rigged the votes to kind of want. So it shows that she kind of had feelings for him in a way, I guess.
Yeah.
Which is always interesting. She comes off as a tsundere type character.
I would have feelings for him too if he had cat ears.
He's always got some weird thing happening to him.
Yeah, so a lot of that I feel now this might be digging a little too deep into the show, but things growing out of your head, I can definitely relate to that. Not that I had an interdimensional portal in my head, but I've been plagued with acne, really bad acne since I was a young teenager. So like I can definitely relate with that. You always have like a new bump or a big ass pimple blowing out of your face. Like I could definitely see that parallel.
Yeah, it's oddly relatable to an extent, because he's really conscious about it, and
or he wears a hat. The hat's bizarre.
It is bizarre, but I like the character design. He's got a cool pullover.
Yeah,
he's
my next cosplay.
I just want that Vespa. I just want to ride around it.
I just want that guitar.
The guitar and the soundtrack is so iconic. It really does. It really does raise the value of the whole show for me. I think show would not work without that punk rock
Right.
type.
It would have a bunch of random, just generic music, like typical anime. So every song in the soundtrack is a banger. Like I have this soundtrack on a lot of my Spotify playlists for that reason.
Mm-hmm.
So in fact, even without like listening to them, I'm sure the other soundtracks of the Fulikuli seasons are, because they're by the Pillows, are also pretty great. A Dre rock band that really puts a great score together for the show. A lot of other shows, like I'm saying, like it doesn't even compare. Like you'll have like random like 5-string guitars like going off and you're just like, what are you doing? Or it's like the Naruto where it's like, yes, like it's just there. It doesn't add to it. But in this show, it definitely, yeah, it adds. It doesn't subtract. It doesn't distract. It's like the whole mood of the show. Like every track for every episode.
For a show that's so obviously going the anti-narrative route, it's like, this is what you can pick on. It's the music, it's the visual, it's kind of like what is happening with the characters in the scene. And I think for me, what I found really kind of interesting about Naota was his relationship with the women in his life that he comes across. And it's kind of like oddly somewhat relatable in a way where, it's like you're kind of drawn to someone, but you don't know why. Sometimes it's kind of enigmatic. And then it's that whole realization where you kind of have to move on from that. And if you look at Haruko, she's kind of described as this apathetic seductress seeking a space manipulating, being called Atomisk, but she's goofing around, right? She's playing with Naota's
she's playing with his head.
Emotions. She's playing with his head. And that's so typical for anyone who's ever kind of, picked up feelings for someone who may have been playful to them.
Right.
It kind of leads you to that trap where you're kind of like, you start off combative and you have your guard up and you're kind of annoyed in a way, but you sort of fall in for it. And I think that's what happens to him. And that's why it's more crushing when she is, in the end, exactly that. She's just an alien. She's not really there.
I'm just using you.
Exactly.
I gotta leave. You gotta go chase him down. It's all your fault. Later. You want to come
even though the immigration bureau's commander, the guy with the seaweed,
the seaweed eyebrows. Yeah. Amararo.
Amararo. Yeah.
Yeah.
Such a weird looking guy with the CV
and the glasses. Yeah. Yeah, he works for the Department of Interstellar Immigration, a middleman for negotiations between the government and medical mechanica. And he sees Haruko as a threat. And you don't even see him until like the 4th episode.
No, he comes on like mid-season.
Lieutenant with the nosebleeds.
Why are they getting nosebleeds?
Well, I don't know. Couldn't tell you. That's an anime thing. That's an anime trope. They're so overwhelmed. They get a nosebleed. When you see a pretty girl, you don't get those. No. Just an anime trope.
I don't suffer from nosebleeds. It is an anime trope, I think, but
and that's fine. She, I guess they drew the lieutenant in like a reference to like the actress who acted her because she was more of a darker skinned Japanese person, which I thought was kind of
right.
cool.
I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah. No, I was looking into it. I was like, oh, cool. I didn't know that. Yeah, it kind of reminds me of the Genkaro, like the style that is a little sketchy because it gets that really close to like blackface, where these girls they put on a lot of makeup, and then this was really big in Harajuku, where they try to like brown their face and they could put on like white makeup around their eyes and get really expressive lipstick on.
Yep.
That's where Jinx came from. It's where Mr. Popo came from. Yeah. You're not sure if it's straight up blackface and got to turn them purple.
True. You gotta change the aesthetic and the color. But in terms of, I wanted to ask you, did you have a favorite episode?
Yeah, probably the one where they're standing on the bridge and it's raining. That's probably my favorite because just like that panda with the mean face line, just like that whole line, it always, it always really puts me like in that mood. Just like I remember being a teenager. I remember it being in unrequited love. I remember, falling really hard for a girl and she's way out of my league, and I don't have the stones to follow through or sweep her over their feet. And sometimes they would be just like Haruko, like messing with my feelings. They knew that they could kept pushing me to see like how far they could get me to do something for them. Like I had like a girl that would ask me, "Hey, you want to skip class with me?" And I was way too much of a dork to be like, No, I'm not. I don't want to be a delinquent."
But now you gotta wish you did, right?
Sort of, but it's regrets. She ended up in an alternative high school, so she got pregnant by some guy, in high school. So she lived her life, I lived mine, and I really would love to talk to her again, but
for a second, it's that feeling of like, you kind of want to capture that feeling of what it's like to be with that person and go on an adventure and do something wild. And I think that is something I can completely relate with as well, because I too can similarly say that about, a girl that I may have had unrequited feelings for, or might have felt like, I would have loved to have been part of her life in some way. And I think that's what I liked about the show, is that that's what makes FLCL so relatable, is that it's not trying to take you on a crazy narrative journey to show you what it's like to be a teenager, but it's just capturing a sense, a sense that can be so tender, a sense so like kind of emotional in a way that you can latch onto it. I think that's hard to do. I don't think it's easy to do that. Right. And I must say that a lot of people may not necessarily vibe with the show. They may just watch it and be like, "This is too random."
Well, that's why I was trying to hesitate on calling it, straight up random for the sake of randomness, because then you would be put in perhaps a different like state of mind going into it. You're like, "Oh, this is just going to be random," LOL.
No, like I remember you told me it was somewhat random and irreverent and kind of like plotless in a way, and I kind of I didn't really have a problem when I watched it, and I knew, okay, straight off from minute one, it is like that. It's not going to lure you in by deceiving you and making you think that there's a plot going in the traditional sense. In the traditional sense, it's just doing what it is. And I think I could accept that because it's intent, right? These guys were intent on telling their story in this way, and that's respectable to me. I'd rather watch something like that than a cheap attempt to tell a story. So,
there's
that's
a lot
why,
of them.
which is a lot. We're saturated with so much content that is pumped out, which is watchable. Sure, it's watchable, but it's not gonna stick with you. Right. It's just junk you consume and you forget like about.
40 new shows every season, and I'm not gonna watch any of them unless I get a good reference or somebody says, "Hey, this is really good," or it's a sequel of something I'm already watching.
But that's the thing, right? There's always someone saying, "Hey, this is good. You should watch this," and you're overflowed with such recommendations that you kind of lose. You're lost in a sea of like choices.
Right.
And that's why it's so important to highlight stuff that is kind of, this is something that's hidden and under the sea. At least now, I mean, I don't think I'd never heard. Look, I watch a lot of anime as well, maybe not as much as you, but
that's okay.
I don't think a lot of people talk about it. So,
it's like 2004.
Kind of like, True, but some of the best anime comes from that era, you know?
Hmm.
So, I think, like, for me, I'll always hold it in a higher regard. I'll always, like, even though it can be imperfect, I can still have a lot of respect for it because I know it comes out at it comes out at a time where, anime was a lot of a different craft than it is
Hmm.
now. Uh, and it is hand drawn, isn't it?
I believe so. I didn't quite look too much into that. In fact, there's some extra features I should have watched on the Blu-ray, I'm sure. Maybe. I didn't even open them up. I was like, I'm just gonna stream it because that's way too much work.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think 6 episodes is the perfect length. I think if they did 12 episodes of it all being like the way it is, it might be a
Hmm.
bit too much for some people
It could be.
to digest. So I think, like, yeah, I really admire the length. And I've always said that I wish animes had more mini series that
Hmm.
are self-contained stories that end and not just tease a second season or continue another arc or whatever.
All right.
So I'm really appreciative of that. And I think a lot of shows like Avatar, I know, were inspired by this. The Last Airbender, I know
Mhm.
Chainsaw Man, the creator of Chainsaw Man, uh, call Chainsaw Man a wicked version of FLCL. Like that's how he was, like, inspired by it. So it does hold up in that regard where people do, at least in the anime community, professionally, people do look up to it, and that's good to
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, if you're an old school anime fan, you'll probably watch this. Yeah,
Even if you don't, I mean, even if you're not an old school anime fan, and
even if
if you
you're a new
do,
one, you got a couple
yeah,
animes under your belt. You got Cowboy Bebop, Samurai Champloo. You got maybe one of the current shows. Maybe you got Demon Slayer under your belt. Check out Foolie Cooley.
yep, yep. It is interesting and weird, and
Yeah, I had complete sidebar. So I had a Foolie Cooley shirt in high school. It had Conti with the Adamus red helmet, and I had somebody. I swear to God, they said, "Is that Master Chief?" And I'm like, "Are you out of your fucking mind? Is that Master Chief?
right.
What the fuck?"
Do you still have the T-shirt?
Oh, I grew out of it.
Right, right.
It had a
I bet
hole
you
in it
own them.
because one of my friends ripped it because we were playing tackle football, and it had a giant Conti like in the corner. It was fucking awesome shirt.
Yeah, I mean, the art of this is spectacular. There's no
Hmm.
doubt about that. Was there anything, like, I know you've watched it so many times. Is there something that you still look at and think you don't understand or you don't like, or you just
Well,
head
I,
over
I
heels in
this is a
admiration?
type of show where I don't try to understand it. Like there
Hmm.
are there are things like in the nuances, there are those emotions that are in there, but it I really just look at this show as like just a vibe. Like it's something
Mm.
that if I want to introduce somebody to this, I'll try. Now, necessarily their attention span or their personality might not quite vibe with this show, but this could blow the pants off a newer anime fan. Like they would just go like, "The fuck was that? That was insane." And I'm like, "That's exactly what this show is. It is. It's not random for the sake of random, but it is a show that is just layered with a lot of like slice of life, like tropes and stuff like that. And like sometimes that's something that's just what you're looking for. You're looking for a cozy show. You're looking for a any of those music shows that are like slice of life, like K-On! It's just like or even like a cozy show like Spy Family. Like you're just looking for something to just like put on and like chill out. Like now there is action in it. It isn't gonna like put you to sleep or anything, but it is just a good cozy show to watch. It doesn't make you like feel like super warm inside or anything, but You can just kind of like vibe with like what it was to be like that age.
For sure. And I think that's what surprised me the most was the fact that it has action in it. I wasn't expecting crazy robot fights and
No.
the city looking. I mean, I just think like, oh, it's like the city's having a normal day and there's like destruction happening on a regular basis now, and people are just going on with their lives.
Yep.
But you can't really rationalize these things. It's part of what world it is in, and the world it's in is kind of like that. But yeah, the town of Mabase is oddly alluring. It does feel really like it's set in its own world in a way. So,
I can
but
definitely see that.
yeah, but yeah.
Did you have a favorite character?
Yeah, for me it was I like Conti.
Oh my god, we're on the same wavelength.
I like
Sometimes I think they're
Conti.
the same person.
Yeah, I like Conti a lot. Although yeah, I liked Naota. He is sort of layered in a way because I think the depiction of what he goes through, feelings he overcomes, especially with Mamini, how he lets her go, and I think how he falls for Haruko. Those are things that I could really relate with personally. But as a character, obviously, I loved Conti. I thought he was he was this sort of innocent savior who was just there for whatever needs he was asked for. And I think, yeah, he's just a cool guy. I really
He's
like
iconic. He doesn't speak. He's possessed by an intergalactic being from time to time. He eats Naota. That's cool. Turns into a badass. He's goofy as the other characters. He's random and weird and silly. He's looking at Hustler because he's buying Hustler for the grandpa. Like he's selfless. And like I said earlier, he's like the most human-like character in the show that isn't human.
Yeah, and how odd is that, and how fitting it is for a show like this, where the humans are the most fucked up. Yeah, the humans are the most fucked up. Well, we do have an alien who is a pathetic,
right? She's
seductress,
complete nihilist.
Yeah, but so is Mamini in a way. She is a nihilist in a way. Or maybe she's delusional in a way. But
right,
I think that is a good critique on society in a way, in terms of how delusional people can be and what it's like capturing that weird existence that is coming of age. But
did you like that slow motion scene?
Which one?
So when they're slow motion and they're like about to kiss, and then they're like, you got to really hold your breath for the slow motion scenes. I thought that was an effect. Just like really breaking the fourth wall and taking you out. Like,
yeah. There was some breaking the fourth wall, especially in the last episode where they were talking about like, we're meant to reveal plot details and stuff. And I thought, oh, okay, these guys are acknowledging that they're playing around and it's not
right. That the show necessarily isn't driven by a narrative. You would have figured that out a while ago if you're watching the show, so it makes sense.
And I do want to insist. I don't want to call these guys geniuses and say, oh, they've made a masterpiece, which is, they thought of everything in here. I do think a lot of what makes this show great is what you can derive from it, and I think the keys are there for you to put the pieces together, and you can see that there is a theme and there is something you can sort of gauge out of it as you watch it over and over. Maybe the first watch you won't. It's just a simple random shit happening, but you watched it over 40 times, so I'm sure you built more of a connection to it and understood what it is. But I do think a lot of it comes down to how much the viewer puts into it. And there is stuff like that. There are stories like that where on a simple watch, it may not mean much, but if you watch it with the intent of trying to associate and connect with it, then yeah, it can be great. And I think that's what it is with this show. This show takes the route of not giving you a narrative in the traditional sense, but it's letting you know that we have all these emotions, all these things that happen that in some way you can maybe relate to, not literally but emotionally. And that's the key that I took with it, is that this is a show that I could follow emotionally and not narratively. So, which is fine. I mean, I do want to say, like, some of the random stuff is maybe not to my taste. Like, I may not necessarily be the type of guy who watches stuff like this, but I can still appreciate it. And I do think, like, when I look back at it and I see what legacy it leaves, especially with Studio Gainax being such a important part of the anime history, I do think that it should be respected and held in a high regard for sure. I hope people watch it, even down the line.
I'm sure.
It is
they
it is
have,
a
and they will.
shame. It is a shame that you say that the newer seasons have not really captured this. That it
Yeah. I would really have
Why-
to stomach to watch them. It's just it's not the same. Like
why is it not?
it feels like it's like wearing the skin of Fooly Cooly. Like it's just like it's the IP. So I almost felt like they made it because they made 2 seasons back to back. That really shows that they didn't make it necessarily because they felt like they could do something different or do something creative and spectacle. But it really just feels like it's just phoned in, and it doesn't capture the same essence as the original, which is why I don't even really acknowledge them. I physically own them because I was given them as a gift, but I might not ever open them up again. We'll see. Maybe I'll give it a shot again.
Right. Well, it is often, that's the tricky part, right? I mean, it's so easy to like cash in on the IP and pump out so many seasons and stuff, but I guess, would you say there is a fan base for this show?
Oh, absolutely. There's 3 other seasons that I don't acknowledge. Of course there is. Fooly Cooly, especially in people in like our age range, that remember maybe seen an episode on Adult Swim growing up. It's like, oh, I kind of remember that. That was on in between episodes of Cowboy Bebop or Naruto or any of those type of shows, or Inuyasha. That show was on at the same time, and I watched all of Inuyasha.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and that show runs on forever by Romoko Takatashi. That show goes literally forever. And that's the type of show that has that generic drums, and even some of those songs are still kind of good.
Yeah, for sure. Well, guess do you want to add anything more or go to
Yes, I do. What's Fooly Cooly, Adi?
What's Fooly Cooly? Are you asking me what's Fooly Cooly?
Yeah. What's Fooly Cooly?
Well, I tried really hard to understand what this is. To be honest, I have no clue. But the only thing that I could understand was the father. I think there's a scene in one of the early episodes.
Explain what Fooly Cooly is.
Well, I may have forgotten, or it's so random that I might have. But the father was like, "Are you fully cooling around with her?" So I thought it was like, "Are you
is
like
it a euphemism?" I'd like to think Fooly Cooly is like how the grandpa explained it. Fooly Cooly is moving your hands like this.
Oh, right.
Yeah, I just wanted to, see what you'd say. Are you ready for ratings, my friend?
Yep. Do you want to go ahead, or should I?
Yeah, I'll go ahead. I got a diatribe.
Great.
So everybody knows John loves this show. But there are some things I can see why people don't like it. Fooly Cooly masks the heavy theme of growing up with a chaotic, immature facade of slapstick comedy. That's what some people would say. It's fast-paced, short Runtime mere the fleeting and turbulent race from childhood to adulthood. Now it is surrounded by stupid characters reflecting on the adolescent feeling of the isolation amid a nonsensical world of flawed adults and corrupt systems. The show's bold, abstract styles enhances its meaning and who we see as a bad anime. They kind of miss the depth. Fooly Cooley criticizes the pressure, critiques rather, the pressure to force maturity while questioning the worth of adult world, making it relatable artistic expression for those who unpack its intent. To no one's surprise, I've always loved the show. Its music, its characters, its story that's kind of peppered throughout the show. That's not necessarily what I'm there for. I've seen the show, like I said, more than any anime I've ever watched in my entire life. It's not the greatest number one anime for any anime user for their first show, as its plot can be a little disjointed and hard to follow. But you know, it's a good vibe. It's good feels. Like Adi said, it really bring maybe an emotion that you don't remember. Like I feel this show is one of a kind, and we only get a show like this once in a great while. Fooly Cooley is timeless, and I don't ever regret giving the show a 10 out of 10. I gave the show a 10 out of 10 infinity years ago when I originally watched it, and it stays by that merit. I know it's not perfect.
Very well said. I think you've really, I'm struggling to see what I can add to this that you haven't really touched upon and hit the nail on the head. But I'll just say that, yeah, it is, truly one of a kind anime. And, some of the randomness may not be for everyone. I'm not sure it would be for me, but I loved what fleeting emotion I could get from it and what it captures in the coming of age genre. Spectacle is irreverent, but it's the emotion that I really latched onto that really guided me on the show. So for me, I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. I think it is significant. Significant in a very different way, not because it, is the best story I've ever seen or anything, but significant because it's unique, and I can respect that. Although there are some things that I don't like about it, which I've tried to kind of point it out, but I'm willing to overlook it because I'm looking at it now. The show came out in 2001?
Yep. Pretty early.
Exactly. So, for me, it's more of a retrospective look to it, and I look at it in that regard with more respect than criticism. So, yeah, it's a favorable review for sure. I hope people watch it.
Oh, that makes me so happy. I'm glad you enjoyed it just as much as I did.
Did you dread that I may have not liked
No.
it,
I felt like really your only real distractions are just the Nazi stuff. So it's just like, I can agree to that.
Yeah.
Sure.
that I don't think is tastefully. It doesn't come up. I mean, it's not even me being woke. I just think it's not funny.
Right. I would never say you're that. I would say you're rational and not somebody that necessarily, cries to all that garbage and you'll bend him over backwards or anything.
I mean, some of the underage love bit is weird. Some of the dynamics with the father is weird, but
really just anime.
That's just anime. Anime is weird. So
anime's fucking goofy.
It is goofy. It is goofy, but it's endearing as well in a way. And it's really a big metaphor for what it's like to grow up. So, yeah, I guess we can end it there.
Yep. We do not have a recommendation for next time. We're still thinking of what we want to cover.
Yep. But that being said, it's goodbye from me, and we'll see you for the next episode.
See you, Space Cowboy.